As rainfall commenced, law enforcement officers positioned themselves strategically outside a series of residential properties occupied by suspected criminals in Greater Manchester. Investigators had been monitoring the transfer of substantial quantities of narcotics and numerous illegal firearms through individuals who believed their criminal organization operated beyond detection. However, on that particular morning, their perceived invisibility was about to shatter. In a matter of minutes, one of the United Kingdom's most complex and well-organized criminal enterprises would begin its collapse. Several years prior, on August 15, 2016, in a different region of northern England, another law enforcement operation was nearing its conclusion. This operation originated from the backstreets of Rochdale, a more modest criminal network, yet equally resolute in its activities. In this case, a residential family dwelling functioned as an illicit drug storage facility, concealing cocaine and heroin valued at millions of pounds. Two distinct criminal worlds, both operating under the assumption they were beyond the reach of authorities. This narrative details their ultimate downfall and illustrates how two separate investigations revealed the clandestine networks that supplied Britain's illegal drug and firearms markets. Within Manchester's urban centre, a criminal operation functioned with the efficiency of an international corporation. Leading this enterprise was Mohammed Omar Malik, an individual who favored discretion over ostentation. From a city center apartment, he supervised the wholesale distribution of cocaine, MDMA, and amphetamine throughout Britain from London and Birmingham to Scotland and Ireland. What initially started as a localized operation transformed into one of the region's most sophisticated organized crime networks ever documented. Malik's organization depended on EncroChat technology. Each participant in the group utilized their own encrypted communication device and pseudonym, functioning within a closed digital environment where authentic identities were never disclosed. Malik functioned under the alias Payer Bills, directing the movement of narcotics and firearms. Adrian Gonzalez, utilizing the handle Terry Tibbs, managed the storage location at Anchorage Marina, an upscale development along Manchester's canals that concealed its illicit purpose. Within these premises, law enforcement would subsequently discover cocaine, MDMA, ammunition, and hundreds of thousands in currency, all vacuum sealed and prepared for transportation. Connor Sandlin, another organization member known as Stelboat, handled courier duties, transporting drugs and currency throughout the country. Daniel Gibbons, operating under the alias Humble Waffle, was entrusted with logistics, establishing a front company called Global Trades UK Limited to disguise weapon imports as legitimate commercial activity. Daniel Waters, known as Obscure Twig, initially served as a courier but expanded the network by recruiting additional members to maintain continuous delivery operations. Andrew Cooney, using the handle Fern Pirate, functioned as both dealer and broker, establishing connections with criminal clients nationwide. Sean Hogan, with the Dull Hyena handle, served as both purchaser and distributor, managing cocaine supplies and acquiring weapons from within the group. Collectively, they constructed a structure that resembled corporate hierarchy, with Malik as the executive director, Gonzalez as operations supervisor, and the others fulfilling designated logistical responsibilities. Their accumulated wealth demonstrated their extensive reach. Porsche vehicles lined their driveways. £600,000 in currency was confiscated during one search, and documentation connected Cooney to an Italian villa. Investigators would later uncover evidence that the group had obtained lethal military-grade firearms that we will discuss momentarily. In summary, this was a network operating quietly beneath Britain's streets until one encrypted communication provided detectives with their breakthrough. In early March 2020, an event occurred that would fundamentally alter organized crime throughout Europe. Working discreetly from facilities in France and the Netherlands, cybercrime investigators successfully penetrated the servers of EncroChat. With this breakthrough, law enforcement agencies gained access to millions of concealed communications. This intelligence was transmitted to the National Crime Agency, establishing the foundation for Operation Venetic. In Greater Manchester, the information was distributed to the Serious Organized Crime Unit, who initiated their own branch of the investigation, designated as Operation Glassy. Their objective was to identify the individuals behind the usernames, a process requiring weeks of digital cross-referencing and meticulous investigative work. Each alias was painstakingly connected to an actual person through location data, photographs, financial documentation, and cellular phone analysis. The communication tone within the messages was routine, almost mundane. Firearms, ammunition, and cocaine were discussed like inventory on a procurement list. Conversations occurred continuously throughout day and night, and their language revealed a criminal system functioning with disturbing efficiency. One message stated 10 ready there with 300 sweets. The 10 referred to firearms, typically Scorpion submachine guns, and sweets signified bullets. Another exchange captured the mentality behind the trade, reading, "As we go to war, at least we got heat." To the individuals involved, these weren't coded warnings. They were business terminology. The prices were established like wholesale rates. Scorpion machine pistols sold between £9,000 and £15,000, while Grand Power handguns commanded prices between £5,000 and £8,500. One message exchange also suggested broader connections, discussions about shipments traveling northward and weapons intended for associates in Ireland. Others referenced conflicts in Scotland, subsequently connected to violent disputes involving rival organized crime groups in Glasgow and Belfast. Detective Inspector Danny Young, one of the firearms specialists reviewing the data, later stated plainly, "This was the highest level of firearm trafficking I've ever encountered." With all this initial and crucial information, police initiated their surveillance operations, which between May and June 2020 confirmed what the digital messages had already indicated. The group was functioning on an industrial scale, trafficking drugs and firearms throughout the country. Beyond firearms, in one discovery, detectives found a digital ledger documenting 739 kilograms of cocaine, supplied between January and May 2020, valued at approximately £25 million wholesale, or roughly £70 million at street level. Investigators revealed at least 52 Scorpion submachine guns and 49 Grand Power pistols, military-grade weapons sold to other criminal gangs. The Greater Manchester Police worked collaboratively with the NCA's Firearms Threat Centre and the Crown Prosecution Service's Complex Casework Unit. Together, they mapped the movements of each suspect, where they convened, whom they contacted, and how the drugs and weapons were transferred along the chain. By early June, the complete picture had emerged. The digital trail matched the physical evidence. Currency movements, vehicles, storage locations, and courier operations all aligned perfectly with the encrypted messages. At this juncture, detectives knew they were prepared to execute arrests. The encrypted empire that once felt invulnerable was already beginning to fracture. On the morning of April 22, 2020, a standard vehicle stop in West Yorkshire became the initial breach in this empire. Inside the vehicle, officers discovered a loaded Grand Power 9mm handgun, ammunition, and a substantial quantity of currency. The driver maintained it was a misunderstanding, a borrowed vehicle, no awareness of the contents. However, when his mobile phone was confiscated, detectives recognized they had encountered something more significant. The device was an EncroChat handset, identical to the encrypted models already under active surveillance. It revealed the driver's identity as Connor Sandlin. His apprehension triggered a cascading reaction that began dismantling the entire organization. Within hours, information reached Adrian Gonzalez. He messaged Mohammed Omar Malik to alert him that one of their associates had been arrested with firearms. Moments later, another message followed, "Switching this off, bro." Then came the question that exposed their anxiety. Feds can't get in them, can they? The men had valid reasons for concern. By that moment, investigators were already monitoring every exchange in real time. As the panic proliferated, organization members began relocating money, phones, and weapons. Surveillance records documented couriers rushing between addresses, evacuating storage houses, and destroying evidence. £300,000 in currency vanished overnight, as they attempted to eliminate the trail that now clearly led back to them. At the Anchorage Marina storage house, observers witnessed boxes being loaded into vehicles and driven away within minutes. Inside one of those containers, detectives later found traces of ammunition, an indication the firearms had recently been relocated. The encrypted system they once relied upon had become a snare. Every action they took to conceal themselves, every message they sent to stay ahead, only positioned the detectives one step further in advance. By the time the panic subsided, the police possessed everything they required, and what followed wasn't a warning, it was the takedown. In the early morning hours of June 14th, teams mobilized across Greater Manchester, in one of the most extensive coordinated takedowns the force had ever executed. At St. Mary's Parsonage in the city center, officers entered a luxury apartment connected to Mohammed Omar Malik. Inside, they found him composed but resigned, his EncroChat handset concealed beneath a sofa cushion. Nearby lay £15,000 in currency and a collection of gold jewelry. The man once considered untouchable was now under arrest. A day later, on June 15th, tactical units raided addresses in Reddish. Daniel Gibbons and Daniel Waters were intercepted carrying large holdalls as they attempted to leave a flat. Inside, officers discovered 2 Scorpion submachine guns, 2 handguns, and 1,098 rounds of live ammunition. Alongside the weapons sat 616,000 pounds in cash, several kilograms of drugs, and amphetamines concealed in a freezer. Documents seized from the same address detailed Global Trades UK Limited. That same evening, Adrian Gonzalez was arrested while departing his city center apartment. His EncroChat device was found hidden beneath artificial grass on the roof terrace, wrapped to avoid detection. Over the subsequent week, detectives closed in on the remaining members. On June 25th, Sean Hogan was arrested in Denton with a taser, currency, and a quarter kilogram of cocaine. Later that day, Andrew Cooney was detained in Audenshaw. His property contained luxury watches, paperwork for 2 Porsches, a quarter kilogram of cocaine, and documents connecting him to an Italian villa used for laundering profits. Each arrest confirmed what the digital trail had already demonstrated. The empire that had required years to construct had collapsed in a matter of days. But the courtroom would reveal just how extensive its influence had been. The courtroom proceedings began months later at Minshull Street Crown Court in Manchester. It lasted 6 weeks, a detailed examination of all the evidence we have already covered. The prosecution, led by John Elvidge KC and Neil Fryman, described the organization as a well-run company, one that had transformed the sale of drugs and firearms into a comprehensive business model. Only one defendant took the witness stand. Andrew Cooney insisted that an unknown passenger must have been using his car and his phone. The jury dismissed the claim without hesitation. The mountain of evidence, digital, financial, and physical, left no room for doubt. Judge Bernadette Baxter described their messages as chilling in their normality, adding that the group had operated as colleagues in a business, not criminals in a conspiracy. Outside court, senior officers from the National Crime Agency and Greater Manchester Police called it a once-in-a-career operation. When the verdicts were announced, the hierarchy of the operation became evident. Mohammed Omar Malik, the ringleader, received a sentence of 38 years. Connor Sandland was imprisoned for 30 years and 5 months, while Daniel Gibbons received 28 years. Daniel Waters was sentenced to 26 years and 5 months, and Andrew Cooney was given 27 years. Sean Hogan was sentenced to 24 years, and Adrian Gonzalez received 25 years. In total, the network faced almost 199 years in prison, one of the longest combined sentences delivered under Operation Venetic. The men who believed their encrypted world made them invisible were finally unmasked. Before Manchester's empire ever began to collapse, another network, quieter but equally profitable, was already thriving further north. This one didn't depend on digital codes or encrypted phones. It operated on trust, family connections, and routine. At its center was Abid Hussain, a 28-year-old from Rochdale who supplied heroin, cocaine, and crack cocaine across Lancashire, Greater Manchester, and Yorkshire. To those surrounding him, he appeared composed and organized, the type of individual who treated the trade like a business. However, behind this facade was a steady supply line that generated millions of pounds in profit. Working alongside him was his partner Mariam Akhtar, aged 31, who helped move money and coordinate deliveries. She was involved in counting, packaging, and transporting currency to buyers across the north. Hussein's uncle, Yasar Mahmoud, 46, worked as a courier, using his taxi to transport drugs and collect payments, blending criminal work with his legitimate employment. The network extended more widely than anyone realized. Ibrair Ashraf, 32, a dealer from Blackburn, was one of Hussein's primary customers, collecting up to 1 kilogram of cocaine weekly. In Newton Heath, Liam Collins, 38, distributed drugs on Hussein's behalf, supplying local dealers who fed Manchester's streets. Further afield, Ovice Bailey and Muhindo Hoko from Leeds acted as smaller-scale purchasers, channeling Hussein's product into West Yorkshire. The group operated from a modest flat on Meadowcroft Lane, Rochdale, a property that appeared unremarkable from the exterior but functioned as a production base for Class A drugs. Despite the low-profile location, the money flowing through it told a different story. Hussein and Akhtar spent lavishly, including a 3-night stay at London's Shangri-La Hotel and a shopping expedition at Harrods worth thousands of pounds just weeks before the police raid. Their spending habits revealed how profitable the network had become. From a small Rochdale flat, the pair had constructed a quiet empire, one that appeared stable, organized, and untouchable. But behind the walls, detectives were already watching, and their operation was about to receive a designation. By May 2016, detectives in Lancashire Constabulary's Serious Crime Unit had begun to notice a pattern. A steady flow of cocaine was moving through East Lancashire, consistent quantities collected and paid for with the same precision every week. The activity centered around Ibrar Ashraf. To understand the scale of what they were observing, officers launched Operation Kellington, an investigation designed to trace the supply line from street level back to its source. Early intelligence indicated Ashraf's weekly collection of 1 kilogram of cocaine, often delivered in person, and always paid for in currency. As the surveillance expanded, phone analysis revealed a link between Ashraf and a number registered in Rochdale. The line belonged to Abid Hussein. From that moment, Hussein became the focal point of the operation. Investigators soon identified his partner, Mariam Akhtar, and his uncle, Yasser Mahmoud, whose taxi routes repeatedly aligned with the movements of known dealers. For weeks, plainclothes teams monitored Mahmoud's journeys between Rochdale, Blackburn, and Newton Heath, watching him deliver bags to addresses that were later confirmed as drop-off points. What began as local surveillance quickly grew into a cross-border operation coordinated with Greater Manchester Police. Together, the forces mapped a clear picture of the network structure and reach. The flow of currency and drugs moved predictably between the same towns, demonstrating that this was not opportunistic dealing, it was a comprehensive supply route. Financial checks added another layer to the case. Despite their modest base in Rochdale, Hussein and Akhtar's spending, as we covered earlier, far exceeded their reported income. By mid-August, detectives had what they needed: the contacts, the vehicles, the routes, and the money trail. The courier chain was fully mapped. All that remained was to execute the operation. Monday, 15th August 2016. It was just after midday when surveillance officers observed Yasser Mahmoud leaving the flat carrying a dark sports bag. Within minutes, Mahmoud's taxi was stopped by police. Inside the bag were 116 grams of crack cocaine, 81.9 grams of cocaine, and 371 grams of heroin drugs with a combined street value of approximately £40,000. Mahmoud was arrested immediately. The discovery gave detectives exactly what they needed. As officers secured the scene, another team prepared to enter the Meadowcroft Lane flat. What followed was the culmination of Operation Kellington, months of coordination, surveillance, and intelligence work now converging on a single address. Inside, nearly every room contained evidence of large-scale production. Kitchen counters held scales, cutting agents, and bagging materials. In the bedrooms, drawers were filled with currency bundles and plastic wraps of heroin and cocaine. In one corner of the living room, officers found a cash counting machine still plugged in. By the time the search was complete, the figures astonished even experienced detectives. The team recovered 2.3 kilograms of Class A drugs, a mixture of heroin, cocaine, and crack cocaine with a total estimated street value of £3 million. Alongside it, they found £164,000 in currency, some still sealed in vacuum packs. The equipment inside showed a level of organization more akin to a commercial production site than a street operation. Detectives later described it as one of the largest seizures ever made in Rochdale. What followed next would take the story from the streets to the courtroom, where the hierarchy of Hussein's empire was laid bare. The hearings took place at Preston Crown Court in August 2017, just 1 year after detectives raided the flat on Meadowcroft Lane. For prosecutors, the evidence presented to court was overwhelming. Most defendants entered early guilty pleas. When passing sentence, the judge described the enterprise as one that relied on consistency and secrecy rather than violence or visibility. He noted that the organization had generated substantial profit before police intervention finally curtailed its reach. Detective Inspector John Roy, speaking after the case, said, "This operation demonstrates we're committed to tackling cross-border criminality and dismantling the supply lines that harm our communities." Abid Hussein, identified as the organizer and supplier, was sentenced to 16.5 years in prison for conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. His partner, Mariam Akhtar, admitted assisting in the operation and received 3.5 years. Hussein's uncle Yasser Mahmoud was imprisoned for 9 years. Ibrar Ashraf received 9 years, while Liam Collins, operating from Newton Heath, was sentenced to 4 years. Further down the chain, Ovais Bailey and Muhindo Hoko both received 6-month suspended sentences and were ordered to complete 80 hours of unpaid work. In total, the defendants received more than 40 years of imprisonment. What do you think about these cases and the sentences? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. And if you found this breakdown informative, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode.